You need to be really bloody careful with who you listen to and who you follow advice from. And I'm preaching to myself here just as much as I am to you. During the history of humanity, there have been some pretty great people. And at the present moment in time in modern civilization, there are some pretty great people. But when you contrast the achievements of modern day business influencers to that of people like Alexander the Great and other people, other conquerors and people like that, we kind of pale in comparison. And here's the thing about becoming successful is you want to give yourself the strongest chance of success. How do you do that? And how do you ensure that you have the highest likelihood of success? Well, the answer is very simple. You listen to people who have actually done really good things, right? And one thing that's always baffled me about this online space is the fact that, and this is even for my YouTube channel, and this is the same, and I'm not trying to shit on any YouTubers because a lot of people add value here, but why listen to any of us when you can go and read about the conquests of Alexander the Great, or when you can go and read about Caesar, right? Or when you can go and read about better men, way better men, people who built civilizations and conquered the world. Because I can tell you how I built my company to 8 figures, but I can't tell you how to conquer the fucking world. And that's way more impressive. And trust me when I say that the lessons that you can learn from studying someone like Alexander the Great far outweigh the lessons you can learn from studying someone like me. One thing that disheartens me about society is the shiny object books. People like self-improvement these days, and they like self-help. And I'm all for people pulling themselves out of ruts and ultimately seeking to improve their lives through knowledge of people who know more than them about life. What I don't understand, why someone would rather read Atomic Habits or The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck than Discourses by Epictetus, or Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, or On the Shortness of Life by Seneca, or Plato's Republic, or any book that has stood the test of time that was written over 2,000 years ago and is still being published today, right? The lessons you can learn, this is a painful lesson for me because I haven't paid enough attention to this stuff in the last few years, but the lessons you can learn from people who basically founded modern knowledge as we know it are so strong that you shouldn't waste your time reading anything else. The root of all knowledge in modern day society, more or less, is rooted in philosophical teachings written a couple of thousand years ago by people like Socrates, Plato, Epictetus, Seneca. All of the knowledge that you're reading around self-help is rooted in Stoicism. So I've studied psychology near enough since I was conscious. The problem with psychology, once again, it all comes back to one person, Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud. They are the founding fathers of psychology. What I was doing, and the mistake I was making with my learning, I was going on Amazon and I was ordering the shiniest books. But since when has misweighed authority, popularity, and irrational reviews ever led to value? Because the weird thing about these popular books is everyone reads them. If everyone reads them, then nobody has the advantage anymore. It's like, they read all these self-help books and they don't actually help themselves. The reason behind that is because they're reading knowledge that is so diluted from the source that it's just so weak and doesn't actually move them at all. Back to the psychology thing. I would read Learned Optimism by Martin Seligman, and Persuasion by Cialdini. Influence by Cialdini is also quite a good one, to be fair. And then I read Civilization and Its Discontents by Freud. And I was like, holy mother above, this guy is different. And then I started to actually look at the sort of hierarchical construction of psychological knowledge and how that had just been built. And then I was like, well, who basically started this bloody study? And it was Jung. And then after that, it was Freud. Same thing with economics. Tell you a really funny story. I was talking to a girl the other day. We were having a conversation about what she was going to do with her future. She was like, oh, I want to go to university to study economics. And I was like, oh, cool. So you're like Adam Smith then? And she was like, who? And I was just like, right. Don't get me wrong, I'm not judging her. Don't think you want to study a discipline unless you've understood the premise of the founding fathers' principles. It's the same thing with if you want to understand genetics and biology, have a gander at Watson and Crick. It's the same thing with if you want to understand nature, just go and study Darwin. Go back to the people that created the very thing you're studying, because they laid out the first principles and the truths that every other person has used to reason their ideas up from. When you read, understand that is diluted from many sources. And so coming back to the YouTuber thing, right? I'm sharing ideas with you that I've learned from, the great people of many different disciplines. Don't waste your time studying me. Same thing with anyone else who you watch on YouTube. Go and read The Conquests of Alexander the Great by Arrian, The Ancient History of Rome. Go and read about the Egyptian Empire, British Empire, empires that conquered the fucking world, because there's lessons in those that you can use to outcompete and win in business. I think this is why people really struggle these days, is because they're using knowledge that is so diluted from the source. Essentially, they are basing and operating their decisions and actions on the lies of people who misunderstood the premise of the truth that was initially laid out probably thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago at least. You want to know how to build a company, you want to know how to win, go and study history. It's what I'm doing right now. It's one of my main priorities. I was reading Epictetus a couple of weeks ago and he said something and I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I've seen that in one of these YouTuber influencers videos, one of these business influencers. And I went back and sure enough, it was completely watered down. But without understanding Epictetus, you wouldn't be able to understand the true nature of the quote. It's kind of prime example of this, the cliche, everything happens for a reason. If you actually understand how reason was developed, and you look at Socrates, for example, and basically the founding father of reason, everything happens for a reason basically means the universe is governed by cause and effect. And so if something happens, it's because of a reason, which means that there was a cause to effect. There's no luck, there's no chance in life. But what people think these days is everything happens for a reason is some sort of mysterious, mystical thing. Oh, I broke up with my boyfriend, or I broke up with my girlfriend, or this person left me, or, oh, this has happened, or I've broken my leg. Oh, don't worry, darling, everything happens for a reason. Oh, because, we're going to delude ourselves and cope and tell ourselves it's luck. It's bollocks. If you understand the quote and where that knowledge is actually sourced from, you'll find the teachings and understandings of synthesis, antithesis, thesis, and cause and effect. And then you'll actually realize, oh, yes, everything happens for a reason, but not because of the woo-wah way that we think it does. And that's just one example, of probably thousands of flaws you currently have in your paradigm, and that I probably also have in my paradigm, because we studied new age modern knowledge without understanding the old age traditional principles that were rooted so far in truth that we didn't even bother to look at them. I mean, obviously you're watching YouTube videos to educate yourself and stuff, but how you can't be curious to know what the greatest minds that have ever lived have thought is beyond me. But with that in mind, if you need more clients, there's a link in the description. I don't care if you click it or not. Beware, it's a video trying to sell you something, but check it out if you want. If not, have a good day. Take care.